Here, everybody. I know it's been a while. Shoot, lots of things have happened, of course, because time is what it is. Um, hmm, very interesting stuff. I know I'm coming home very late. Um, hmm, I'm really happy that there's a consciousness amongst a lot of us original Black American types. Um, and that there's things that we are doing now that we didn't do a long time ago. Uh, a lot of people gatekeep, we don't, and unfortunately it's turned on us as a form of disrespect. The sad thing about that is just basically like people kind of taking advantage of the opportunities that you've actually made. Sorry guys, hold on. Let me turn this app off. Hold on. Hold on. One of those things that and I've been meaning to address this since actually since yeah, for quite some time. Um the thing about hip hop, I'm gonna do another video. I'm gonna do a video on this, and I might just delete this whole thing, this whole live, because I've been wanting to do a video on that. For me, I like to sit down and just kind of brief over things, and I haven't had the time. I haven't really done a lot of videos, even though I did videos, a few videos here and there. I've been wanting to really talk about this too. And I'm gonna expound it on my other channel more so, because that's more musically dedicated or whatnot. But this thing with hip hop, I could under people if you are non-black American. I don't expect you to understand, but at the same time, I would oblige you to understand. I don't know if that's the best word to use because I don't want to seem like I'm ordering anyone around, but go. Just keep in mind this thing where it's like I'm glad Tariq is doing microphone check. Um, and like I said before, I've been meaning to actually do a video on this. I did an Instagram post. I'm just gonna take the video one of these days. I'll do it on my other channel, Audio Discourse Music. Um, check that out. But the thing is, a lot of people are talking about how hip hop basically had two creators and it didn't. What I mean, things like that and rock and roll, and jazz, it's just like almost like we've been a people to share our gifts. But it's messed up when people don't really give us our flowers when it comes to those gifts. Those gifts were made out of oppression. Those gifts were made to get us in a right mind state of creativity instead of something that was destructive. Blues was definitely, I mean, work songs and all that stuff culminated into what was known now as blues. Just to our therapy of actually playing our feelings out. Our therapy when it comes to just what we were going through, as foundational or original Black Americans, you know. And the other side of that was gospel. Gospel, those spirituals were were songs dedicated to the Most High, but also to sing of our liberation, our suffering and liberation. Um, and some people of faith just focus on the suffering aspect of it. Black Americans were not trying to suffer. We weren't praising the suffering part of that. We were trying to be liberated, and that's what got us to sing the songs that we did. And we saw the Most High for what He was doing with us as far as our guidance. The struggle was definitely something that was considered because it's what we were going through. But when it comes to suffering, that was nothing that we wanted. But in that suffering, we still looked to the Most High and tried to be the best people that we are. I mentioned that because there's some people of certain spiritual practices that think that, like, when they mention the Black American experience, oh, that suffering was so good. No, it wasn't. It's almost like they portray it as something good, as something, yeah, we can say it was Christ-like, but a lot of us were not trying to suffer. We're trying to get out of that suffering when it comes to being beaten, raped, murdered, and all that stuff. That's nothing good. That's nothing to glee about. I can't side with that. Whoever thinks that. Um, but getting back to that, gospel music was basically of a praise to the Most High, but also about our liberation through the Most High, and just nothing that was just a pie in the sky per se, even though some people might look at it as that. It's talking about now, in this time as well. You had ragtime and all the things that became jazz, which came from the blues and also that liberation. We also had country. I forgot to mention that with blues. It's a particular kind of blues. Um, and then after jazz, we have rock and roll, which was more of kind of like, I mean, jazz was a celebration. I mean, people danced and all that. A lot of, and rock and roll was just like a youthful version of that. Not to say that jazz was for old people, but it was just a different conjugation, which seemed a little bit more rugged and raw. But then again, we can say there's elements of jazz that was like that too. Jazz is always seen as mellow, but jazz was a raging thing back then. As a matter of fact, one of the earlier titles of what became rock and roll was called hot jazz because it was brazen, you know. And after, with rock and roll we got, I mean, rock and roll basically is R&B, which comes from blues and gospel fusing itself together. Rhythm and blues, up-tempo blues music, which became rock and roll. And then after that, we have soul music, which was the intent of just in general, a lot of Black American titles when it comes to music and all that. Soul music was the smoother side of what R&B created. But then that heavy soul that, was just too, it wasn't as smooth, which became funk, you know? It was had that stomp down beat that was just, something that you couldn't just sit down to. A lot of that was liberation. Within funk, you had things that people started doing repetitively. And actually, that was a part of soul too, which became disco. You know, soul had two children, funk and disco. And funk and disco were some of the earliest. I mean, they were like almost like, I mean, it was the dance music. All these musics were dance music, really. But getting to the 70s, and this is when we're starting to talk about hip hop. This brings it all the way up to hip hop. What became known as disco basically was DJ spinning the stuff, back in the late 60s, and the up tempo beat that it had, which was still soul in its own right, you know, but just a different kind of soul. Like I mentioned before with funk, it was just a different, it was another side of soul. And both of these musics were played. And although disco kind of manifested itself in other ways and under different names such as house and techno, hip hop remained what it was. You know, all of these are Black American creations. You can't get away from that. All of these have gone worldwide when it comes to just popularity, and the most form of popular music was all of these musics: blues, jazz, gospel too, R&B, rock and roll, disco and funk, or soul, funk and disco, and then hip hop, and all the derivatives of all of those. The thing that people are getting twisted is they don't want to recognize the root. A lot of the root goes back to Black American, foundational Black Americans. Pretty much people don't understand. All modern pop music rests on Black Americans, original Black Americans. And unfortunately, we just haven't been getting the props, but it's a new day, and a lot of us are now saying, hey, this is our creation. We're not just going to humbly share it with you. This is us. We've shared it with the whole world. But it's time that we're not waiting to get flowers. We're taking our flowers. As a matter of fact, we're taking the seeds of the flowers as well. Some people might think it's such a tedious thing, but when you speak of culture, it's not like that with every other culture. Every other culture holds on to their thing, and everyone expects us to just not care. And then they say that we have no culture, which is not true, because our culture has gone global before the internet. Yeah, viral before all that, in so many different ways. And I'm just talking about music with this. There's other things that have gone global that we've done too and never gotten props for. But I'm just keeping it music right here, right now. This movie Microphone Check is very important. So check it out. It's a great movie that Tariq Nasheed is doing. And I think Dewan B also has another movie, a movie coming out as well. And we need movies like this. And the world should know. So I'm glad that both Tariq and Dewan B is doing what they're doing. As far as like just keeping everything conscious, when it comes to our music and culture. I'm a musician, as many of you know. I'm a wannabe music historian. I just call myself a music nerd because there's always something to learn. And my other channel is more dedicated to that. I'm going to do a separate video. I'm probably going to take this live down when I do the video review for Microphone Check, and just, or the promotion for it. But I thought I would just come on a live. YouTube has been doing some weird stuff. They don't like the fact that we're speaking up against disrespect. You got these charlatans like Dr. Cologne, and I would rather call him what his name looks like, but I might get dinged. And I'll explain why. And the other woman, and in Dirty TV, I'm not going to mention who that person is because I don't have, yeah. All these people are basically trying to take us away from hip hop. They don't care about the significance of what we've done, and then they'll make a lot of statements, but yet someone does that to their form, then they'll get upset. So for me, I just recognize them as anti-black racist in this regard. It seems harsh, some of you guys are saying, but the thing is, dude, the fact that these people are trying to disregard our creation and just bogart their way in to say that, hey, we did this 50-50, like Fat Joe said. Or they'll say things like, oh, Americans have no culture, like Busta Rhymes said. Well, Busta, here's a question for you. Why do you rap in a Black American accent? Since you say that we have no culture, but you're rapping in a vernacular and in the same cadence and the way that a Black American would. Otherwise, you're not speaking patois. A lot of people say that Jamaicans basically like invented hip hop. That's not true. And I'll be honest, I thought that for a while, not necessarily them inventing hip hop, but just they had a huge contribution to it, which, I believe the whole Kool Herc thing until I saw this one documentary about DJ Flowers and DJ Hollywood. That's what got me on the road to say, whoa, these guys didn't start hip hop. I forgot the name of the video, but I saw it probably a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it put everything into a different perspective, and then started finding out about um, people like King Disco Mario and channels like the culture. I think it was the channel's called the culture um, before 1971, something like that. I wish when I do my video, I'm gonna shout out all those. True Savior, and I'm glad Tariq actually gave him a shout out. It's one of them. And another one that really breaks down a lot of these anti-black racist types. I'm gonna call those people that because how dare you tell us what we've not done when you have no idea about our culture or history? And this dude's a teacher. And Dirty TV and the other person, the woman who's talking about King Disco Mario was Puerto Rican when he wasn't. Her name is the opposite of what she says her name is, so I just call her hate. It's all hate, man. You know, I give a lot of my I give props when it comes to like a lot of I do like a lot of like you know Latin b-boys and rappers as far as like artistry goes, but I mean they weren't creating the genre. They were functioning in a genre and in a framework that was there before they even came in there, you know? And I admire, I'm the first one to tell you, I know the first b-boy to go to Mexico. He's a Latin guy, really cool cat. But this art form was around before he even started, you know? I like a lot of, like, yeah, dude, how can I say this? I give props to cats that are amazing artists no matter what. But at the same time, when it comes to innovation and invention, I'm not gonna freaking shy away from that. And when it comes to hip hop, Black Americans are the inventors of that. There's a lot of connections, and it's the reason I mention everything with a lot of those genres of music. Those dances went along with that. Just our culture has had so many different kinds of creation when it comes to music and dance that you can't just not see that, you know. And b-boying and popping is from that kind of street dance. I started popping in the 80s, you know, but I know poppers that were popping in the 70s, so I know like growing up with hip hop, I wasn't there in the 70s when it was sprouted from 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 New York, but at the same time, a lot of the same things were going on in different ways on the West Coast and in Detroit and in Chicago. It was funk culture, the dances and all that, you know. They may have had gems in the street in New York and boroughs, but we had Watt Stacks out here and Soul Train in the 70s, you know. It parallels that funk. The funk was a big deal, and it rap has been around since the early of 20th century. Even some people might even say before. But rap, basically, hip hop is the culture of rap. Rap existed in even all the genres that we talked about before, but it found its place in hip hop, its conjugation and its resting place, and its, I should just say, residency, not resting place, because it's still going on. Its residency, he took, with its home is with hip hop. It's the culture of what rap was. People like Amde from Watts Prophets coined that term rap. And there's other people like H-Rap Brown we've had that in our lingo for the longest when it comes to um, just Black American vernacular. You know, I like the fact that Tariq used the term hip, and we've been using the term hip or hep, just like as a term that we have. You know, a lot of the terms in hip hop, especially when it comes to the 5%ers. I'm gonna go over this and probably get a better video when I do the video of the post that I did on Instagram. But there's a lot of connections with Black American culture and hip hop. It came from Black American culture. Yes, there were some people that were there earlier on, but we started it, and they had to function in the same framework that of culture that we lived in. That's the only way hip hop could be conjugated. Nothing more, nothing less. And getting back to the Jamaican thing, if Jamaicans brought hip hop to America, how come that didn't happen in England? There's a lot of Jamaicans there. A lot of them, you know, what was ska and stuff over there in Rocksteady became roots reggae. How come that didn't happen over here in the US? We all know the answer why, because hip hop was in the US before Kool Herc came over. He wasn't the first DJ to do what he's doing, even though he is a pioneer. He didn't start hip hop. You know, I mean, then you got this one Dr. Cologne dude talking about the Latin breakdown and all that. It's like, dude, you're breaking down crying because nobody believes you, and it's not true. Talking about a Latin discaga, and he doesn't try to Africanize when he talks about Latin culture and Puerto Ricans contributing. He doesn't do that. He'll just call it what that is. But when we mention our own culture, he tries to do Africanize that. Well, let me tell you something, Dr. Cologne. That Latin discaga is African, just like what we were doing with the congas was African. We're very much into our culture, our African roots. There's no such thing as a Latin breakdown. There wasn't trying, any of those guys that played the congas were not trying to be Latino. They weren't trying to emulate any kind of salsa or anything like that. You got people like the slap of the drum, or the slap of hip hop, which was Nalija. I always say his name wrong. The percussionist from The Last Poets, or Cosmic Charlie Sanders with Gil Scott Heron. My dad had congas. He was not trying to be a conguero. And if you want to get technical, or no, if you want to get simple, it's all African influence. Even the so-called Latin discaga, it seems like a contradiction. Latin breakdown. I'm looking, and whenever he says that, I always think of Latin as a European thing. Latin is more of a language, if anything, and it comes from Europe. So I don't understand. I mean, the breakdown is African if you want to go there. There is no Latin breakdown. There is no discaga. You made that up, bro. Everything, yeah. That's African, bro. The Latin discaga is African just as much as what a lot of the bongo players playing in a lot of the breaks were. And the breaks, dude, there's all kinds of different breaks. There's a lot of breaks without bongos and percussion. Anyway, yeah, y'all, Truth Savior broke down a lot of stuff. I've been meaning to do a video on this, but don't look at this as the only thing that I'm going to do on it. I want to actually do a better video than this. I'm just sharing my thoughts just to get this off my chest. I thought about not doing it because I don't want to be jumping on trends or anything like that. But I do talk about musical stuff, so that's why I'm doing this video right now. Anyway, you guys, I hope everything is good. Check out Microphone Check. And yes, hip hop, rock and roll, jazz, blues, gospel, freaking even country, and funk and disco, all Black American rooted. And all have gone viral worldwide. Great creation. Not the only thing that we created, but that's most of the popular music that we've had is pretty much, no, all the popular music that we've had has gone worldwide. All right, peace.